evening, I'm Diane in Hong Kong and welcome to ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. CE-elect Carrie Lam promises to fully relay the views of Hong Kong people to Beijing. In a case of deja vu today, Executive Councillor Fanny Law and ex-LegCo President Jasper Zhang commend One Country, Two Systems as a success. 3 injured, 7 missing after U.S. Navy ship collides with Philippine-flagged merchant vessel off Japanese coast. Honesty is the best policy. That's how Chief Executive-elect Carrie Lam sums up her approach to dealing with the city's relationship with Beijing. Lam's comments come exactly 2 weeks before she takes office. Taking to the airwaves this morning, Lam said misunderstandings may arise under the One Country, Two Systems principle and that it will be her job as Hong Kong leader to act as a bridge between both sides. She vowed to truthfully relay the views of Hong Kong people to Chinese authorities. Lam also took the chance to shut down claims that she isn't getting support from civil servants. The CEO-elect pointed out that her team is made up of more government workers than the current administration. She also vowed to try to avoid creating any misunderstandings after she takes office.
Even if we come up with the best policies, if we cannot properly explain what they are to the public, it'll be very easy for some people to take advantage of the situation and put a different spin on the policies. That will cause problems for the government. So I will require all my officials to put a lot of focus on carefully explaining all the policies to the public.
Now, in 2 weeks' time, Hong Kong will also be celebrating the 20th anniversary of its handover back to China. And Executive Councillor Fanny Law says now is the right time for Hong Kong young people to learn about the basic law to clear up any misunderstandings they may have surrounding the city's mini-constitution. During an interview today, Law pointed out that the One Country, Two Systems principle has been successful, while adding that people who think there's no relationship between Hong Kong and the mainland are deeply mistaken. Law said if people take the time to read the basic law carefully, they'll find that Beijing has a lot of power over the SAR. The EXCO member also said those who call for independence are simply misguided.
A lot of the things these people are complaining about are not related to the One Country, Two Systems principle at all. For example, some say they don't want mainlanders to buy up all the baby milk formula in Hong Kong, while others don't want mainland children to study here. We have to find the root of the problems and speak to the young people because Hong Kong independence is not needed to deal with these issues.
Echoing Law's words at a separate event today was former LegCo President Jasper Zhang. He said One Country, Two Systems has been for the most part a success, adding that whether or not the principle continues beyond 2047 will depend on Hong Kong's respect for China's sovereignty.
We don't have a choice, actually. One country, two systems must succeed for the sake of Hong Kong and that of China as well. If we give up the principle, one country will not fall, but we will lose two systems, which means the end of high degree of autonomy and the end of Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong. This outcome will not be beneficial to most Hong Kong people for sure.
Now to some concerning news surrounding the long-awaited Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Authorities have found dozens of problematic batches of concrete samples used on the project. The Civil Engineering and Development Department has been reviewing tests conducted by a lab now accused of faking concrete test reports. Its investigation has unveiled 116 abnormal results. The CEDD stressed the concrete is perfectly fine, saying it's only about 0.2% of the samples. The reports are being passed on to the Highways Department to ensure the material being used is safe. Now, from midnight, healthcare will be a little bit more expensive. The revision of public medical services charges is taking effect. Costs for using accident and emergency services at public hospitals will jump from $100 to $180. Fees for general outpatient clinics will increase slightly from $50 from $45. Charges for acute beds also going up from $120 from $100. Now, elsewhere, 7 crew members are missing and at least 3 injured after a U.S. Navy destroyer collided with a Philippine-flagged container ship off the coast of Japan. Kate King has the latest.
In the light of day, the damage to the USS Fitzgerald is plain to see. The Navy missile destroyer guided back to port after colliding with a Philippine-flagged container ship in the middle of the night. The US Navy says 7 crew members are missing, helicopters and patrol vessels now helping with the search. 3 others, including the ship's commander, airlifted to hospital. The crash happened in Japan's Tokyo Bay, a busy area between the country's 2 biggest container ports. It's still unclear how or why the ships collided. No one on board the merchant vessel was injured, and the ship itself sustained little damage. The Japanese Coast Guard, helping to bring the warship back to port, says the Fitzgerald is taking on water but isn't in danger of sinking.
In a move that's set to reverse US-Cuban relations once again, US President Donald Trump has announced he is cancelling his predecessor, Barack Obama's, quote, terrible and misguided deal with Havana. In rolling out his new Cuba policy, Trump signed a presidential directive to order tighter restrictions on Americans traveling to the Caribbean island and a clampdown on US business dealings with the country's military. This as a US leader sought to show he was making good on a campaign promise to take a tougher line against Cuba, especially over its human rights record. However, a majority of Obama's changes are untouched, including the reopened US embassy in Havana.
The previous administration's easing of restrictions on travel and trade does not help the Cuban people. They only enrich the Cuban regime. We will not lift sanctions on the Cuban regime until all political prisoners are freed, freedoms of assembly and expression are respected, all political parties are legalized, and free and internationally supervised elections are scheduled. Elections.
As expected, Havana is up in arms over Trump's announcement, saying the U.S. president had been badly advised. In a statement read out on the evening news, Raul Castro's government said the U.S. is resorting to coercive methods of the past that are doomed to fail. However, the government remains willing to engage in respective dialogue with America. In densely Cuban-American populated Miami, protesters took to the streets to demonstrate for and against Trump's policy. Those who are against said the new policy is only going to hurt the Cubans.
This reversal is going to hurt people on the island. Constricting travel to the island is going to hurt Cuban entrepreneurs on the island that host people that are coming there in their own homes. That now what's going to happen is you're going to have Americans that have to go with U.S.-sponsored organizations that are going to do business with the Cuban military-sponsored tourism industry. So who is this policy really helping?
Now, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. We've been bringing you details of President Trump's decision to scrap parts of the U.S. diplomatic deal with Cuba. But what's this going to mean for businesses? Fred Katayama takes a look.
President Donald Trump is clamping down on business with Cuba's military. He banned any U.S. dealings with the Cuban Armed Forces Business Enterprises Group. That government conglomerate pulls the strings in all sectors of the economy. Trump also ordered tighter restrictions on Americans traveling to Cuba as tourists. But he didn't completely nix his predecessor, President Barack Obama's deal with the island. For instance, Trump kept direct U.S.-Cuba commercial flights and cruise ship travel. And he didn't bring back limits on Cuba's rum and cigars that Americans can bring home for personal use. One White House official told Reuters the administration has no intention of disrupting existing business ventures. Manhattan Institute's Diane Roth says Trump's decision is more about human rights than money.
In the short run, it might be bad for businesses, but in the long run, it'll be good for businesses because pressure on human rights issues will encourage Cuba to open up and become more free market oriented, and that will result in more businesses being able to do business with Cuba.
Trump stopped short of breaking diplomatic relations restored in 2015 after more than 5 decades of hostilities.
Amazon is going organic. It's buying American supermarket chain Whole Foods for almost $14 billion. It's Amazon's largest deal to date and marks its biggest foray into the brick and mortar retail sector. Until now, it hadn't really made a dent in the grocery market. It also gives Whole Foods a bigger edge. The high-end grocer can tap into Amazon's enormous power to buy and sell goods at a lower cost. Now, speaking of food, McDonald's is ending its 4-decade run of sponsoring Olympic Games. The fast food giant is pulling out of its contract with the International Olympic Committee 3 years early, saying it wants to focus on other priorities. McDonald's, which has been a sponsor since 1976, reportedly paid close to $25 million a year for exposure at the Summer and Winter Games. When Snapchat debuted on the New York Stock Exchange earlier this year, its share price skyrocketed. Fast forward to today, and the app's stock has plummeted back to where it started. Conway Gittins looks at why investors want out of the social media company.
Snap, the new kid on the block, getting trampled as the run out of tech stocks gathers speed. Shares of the social media company falling Thursday to their lowest price since going public back in March. The selling threatening enough to push the stock back down to within cents of its $17 IPO price. With Facebook breathing down its neck, Snapchat's user growth is slowing, revenue prospects are in jeopardy, and Snap may have trouble ever turning a profit. That's enough to trigger memories of what happened during the tech boom that went bust at the start of the millennium. Pressure on the stock not likely to let up as some IPO insiders finally get to sell their shares starting in July.
Well, don't go away, there's plenty more to come on the show, including protesters unleashing on UK government in the wake of deadly Grenfell Tower tragedy.